Pleasant good evening to all of you. Welcome back. Thank you for your prayers. We just got back from a long but much needed break to the Philippines, and thank you for all of those who are praying that we get back safely. We had a lot of quarantine. The ECQ, MECQ, and all those alphabetical things that we have to do, but we're back safe. And the time we spent with my family, again, my mom and dad who's watching, we're back. I'm back, and also Elmer and Chut, and all the people that are there, all the pastors that I met, Pastor Edward, Mimes. Thank you for your hospitalities, and praise God that we are still here, and we are now back on our live telecast. And we are praying for some people right now. Being a Friday, again, let me remind you that after this program, we do have our Zoom prayer meeting with our church family. And I know that so many things we need to pray for. The battle is not over regarding this COVID. And especially where I came from, it keeps on rising up, and the spike is there. It's in God's hands, I know. And since the moment everything, the COVID pandemic started, we have entrusted it to the Lord, and we never faltered in trusting God. Okay, I'd like to greet the August birthday celebrants. There are so many of them, but I'll start maybe from the mid-week, from Neil Cerato, JR Cruz, my dad, Victor Casaye. I was there. I'm glad I spent my birthday there. Dr. Piutica and Terence and Fernando and Cruzela. Happy birthday, Grace Castellano, Jesse De La Vega, Kuya Jesse. We miss you. Charlene Marcelo and Sister Jeannie Rivera, and all our wedding anniversaries. We don't want to miss that. And I know you've been seeing them in Facebook celebrating. Hector and Karina, Carlos and Connie Eldridge, Kevin and Cheska Banares, Raul and Grace Castellano, Alan and Annalisa Del Rosario. Wonderful couples. They are the people of our church and very active. Now also, we just like to know, Brother William, we're praying for you, praying for your recovery, and those that are in our prayer list. May God uplift you right now. May the Spirit of God give you His peace and comfort. Okay? So again, it's a joy to be back and just to share the Word of God with all of you. What I would like to share with all of you tonight is in relation to a pastor that we're texting each other back and forth because he is going through some difficulties, and he was just reporting to us and to his friends about the cancer treatment that his young daughter is experiencing in the Philippines. And now after the chemo, I think she's now going through radiation. And in between that, there's some threat of COVID. They got sick, and things have to be canceled, and so plus some big, of course, like in the Philippines, big financial responsibilities, and all of these are just overwhelming him. And I could sense and feel that it's really something that put a big burden in his heart and mind and even spirit right now. So I told him in my last text, I told him that you're going through a storm right now, and one day this storm will pass. This storm will pass. So I'd like to share with you a message regarding storms, because we do pass in this life. Okay, we expect that one day one way, somehow, we will go through some storms in this life. So I'd like to share with you regarding the storms of life. The storms of life. But I'd like to share something. Now, if you go to the... there's a big hurricane approaching right now, and it's gonna hit the Gulf of Mexico, I think. And it has a name. Know that? It has a name. Do you know that storms have, since 1953, they started naming storms after women, and then somehow in 1970s they started involving women's name and men's name, and I just like to show you, okay, this list. I hope you're watching this later on. The storm that's approaching is named Ida, and they're expecting it to be either a category 3 or higher. And they've already set the names for the storm for the whole year. Imagine that, huh? And every 6 years, by the way, they repeat the names. I don't know in some other countries, but here in the States, they repeat those names every 6 years. So on the 6th year, you'll see another Anna, Bill, Claudette, and alphabetically. What I want to share with you is this. How come they have these names? How come in a certain season, they have different names for each storm that come? What does that tell you? Well, I'd like to share with you that the reason they have these different names because one storm passes after the other. Meaning, no storm stays. There's not just a storm that within a year, let's say the storm Ida, that the whole year that storm Ida stayed. No, it will pass through. And then the next storm is named Julian, and the next storm after that, after it passes, is named Kate, and so forth and so on. It reminds us that every storm comes to pass. No storms come to stay. And once it leaves, rest assured, if not this season, maybe the next year, then another storm will come. That's part of life. And because of that, it reminds me regarding storms. People are passing through big storms right now, in their financial lives, in their health, in their ministry, everything in our life is touched by those storms one way or the other. So let me share with you someone who've been through so many storms, and we could learn something from him. His name is the Apostle Paul. And I'd like to get this portion in Acts, the book of Acts, chapter 27. In the whole chapter 27, the Apostle Paul experienced a storm, a unique one. This is not the first one. Maybe we'll see later that he's gone through so many storms. But there is something that he experienced in this storm that could help you and me understand what we're going through and how we'll go through it by God's grace. Okay? So let's start with Acts chapter 27. It starts by when it was decided that we should sail to Italy. And by the way, Luke was the one writing here, the whole book of Acts, because Dr. Luke was with him. They delivered Paul and some other prisoners, one named Julius, a centurion of the Augustan region. Now look at that. The goal is to bring him to Rome, Italy, where he will face trial before the highest court, before Caesar. And that's what this whole chapter, how it started. So it says here that that season that they started is actually the season for storms. The weather is not good. The Day of Atonement had passed, meaning it is now a season for much weather disturbances, as we call it. But again, they went through with their plan. Maybe they thought they could handle it. Maybe they thought they've gone through it before, so they could handle it again. So again, when it comes to Paul's journey to Rome, if you could see the map, just go to Google, you could see the map where they left from Jerusalem and took the boat from Caesarea to to, all that red line until they reach Italy. That's the trip that this chapter 27 is talking about, and we will learn a lot about this storm. So the Bible said in 2 Corinthians 11 that Paul has been through many shipwrecks. That's why I know that this storm, wherein they had another shipwreck, by the way, was probably his fourth time. So Paul is already experienced in storms. You cannot nudge him. You cannot. He knows how it is to go to storm. He knows when he sees the weather. He knows it's gonna be a stormy weather, through experience. But anyway, what's important is in verse 9. It says here that before they traveled, okay, Paul already told them, "Man," he said, "I perceive that this voyage will end with disaster and much loss, not only of the cargo and the ship, but also our lives." He warned them. He warned them and said, "Guys, I've been through many shipwrecks, and it looks like here's another one." So they were warned, and they still were persuaded. They still went through. They thought they can make it. So once they reached the Greek island of Crete, that's when they first experienced big storm. And I'd like to share with you, based on that experience, about outlasting the storms of life. Because there's one storm after the other, but God has given us the grace, the power, the ability to outlast those storms of life. Growing up, growing up in the Philippines, which has around 20-25 typhoons every year on an average. So I've seen a lot. Okay, some worse, some lesser, but they are storms, by the way. So what I'd like to share is three things regarding Paul's experience. Number one, stormy times are times of despair. It's really time of despair. So what happens here? First of all, because storms are, very deceptive. Very deceptive. It says in verse 13, "And when the south wind blew softly." So there was a lull, there was a good weather, there was a day of, sunshine, maybe everything has passed. And supposing they had obtained their desire, putting out to sea, then they sailed. Why did they sail? Because the wind blew softly. Very deceiving, right? Because now we have the Doppler radar, and they could detect, they could tell you the weather 10 days from now, 15 days from now. Imagine that. But during the time of Paul, they don't have that. They just have to look at the sky. They have no weather report or 10-day weather report. So they were deceived and said, "Oh, the weather is good." But that's how storms usually come in our life. Everything was smooth, peaceful. Your life is calm. Your financial things are in order. The money that you're expecting, always arrives. So everything was smooth. Your health is okay. You check your BP the other day, and as you've been checking it many days, and it's normal. And then suddenly, what you think was normal, then suddenly, boom, the storm comes. The strong wind, the weather, the waves will come, and you're gonna say, "Man, everything was calm yesterday. What happened today?" Because storms are deceptive. They're very deceptive. But we should not be surprised, because we've been warned that in this life, troubles will come. Job 5:7 said, "Yet man is born to trouble as the sparks fly upward." You know how every spark of a fire flies upward. Nothing goes downward, right? First has to go up, right? So the same way, you can be assured that sparks fly upward, then troubles come. Troubles come. In the Christian life, sometimes it's called testing or trials, and the Bible has warned us that it will come. In James chapter 1, the Bible said, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials." Notice what the Bible said. When you fall, not if you fall. It simply means, guys, you will fall into various trials. It's not a matter of whether you'll fall or not. It's a matter of just when. Okay? So when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work. So storms do come. We've been warned. And they come in various trials. Not just one storm, not just one testing. It comes in various forms. It could come in sickness. It could come in, as I said, a family problem. It could come in family issues or financial issues and things like that. Varied. Okay? It could come with the economy. It could come with pandemic. It could come with a fire. It could come with a storm, real storm. Or it's varied, but they will test your faith. They will test our faith. And not only that, in 1 Peter, the Bible said, "In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved through, again, by various trials." But again, all of this is to test the genuineness of our faith. Why does it have to test the genuineness of our faith? In the jewelry business, there are many things right now that really, really looks like diamond. Right? So what you need some testing equipment, like a diamond tester, they call it. And it would test, it will differentiate the genuine diamond from a fake one, from a Russian diamond, from in Tagalog, puwet ng baso, And sometimes God has to do that to show us who we really depend on, who we really trust. God has to send us through a faith tester, like a diamond tester, a faith tester, and they're called trials. And this will show us, like a test, that it goes through fire, and then later on, if it's real, then it'll be found to praise and honor and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ. It has to be real. And trials, storms, are the best testers in life. It will really prove, it will really show you who you trust in your heart. Well, not only is it something that very deceptive, but also it's a disaster. It's a disastrous thing. All storms have some level of disaster attached to it. And the Bible said, but not long after that peaceful weather, and then not long after, or immediately, a tempestuous headwind arose called Euroclydon. Euroclydon is simply a word for a northeaster, a sudden typhoon that comes. Okay, and you even have that in the America right here, a nor'easter they call it, and it brings terrible havoc and in the north and the east, and nor'easter anyway. And the strong wind comes and it's a disaster. And disasters, usually one quality of a disaster is that usually it's out of our control. If either it's a wave, strong wave, it's out of your control. No captain, no trained marine expert could control the wave. It's part of it. In the same way, things that happen in our life, it's totally out of control. It's unexpected, and you cannot do anything about it. You know what happened to them, to Apostle Paul? So when the ship was caught and could not head into the wind, we let her drive. You know what it means? They cannot control the wave. They cannot control the ship, so they just allow the wave to bring them where the waves can bring them. Totally out of control. And many times, storms are like that in our lives. You did your best. You try to be healthy. You run 2 miles a day. You eat vegetables. You're a vegan. You try to do all those diet. You live a life of health, and then suddenly something happens. You land in the hospital. It's sudden, and usually it's disastrous. It's out of your control. And because of that, you're brought into danger. You're brought into danger. When they were in the storm, they feared that they should run aground on the Syrtis sand. Some version said it's quicksand. Actually, it's a place in the Mediterranean where it's known for shipwreck. There's that area wherein many ships are buried in the sea, because that area is called the Sirte sands, or a quicksand, a place where the water suddenly becomes so dangerous that many ships have sank, and it's like a place where all of them are found there. And so it's dangerous. It's dangerous because when you go through the storms of life, it changes your plan, it changes your activities, it changes your health, it changes everything. You're in danger, and your dreams are in danger, your future is in danger, your plans are in danger, right? You cannot control that. Another thing that storms bring upon our lives is desperation. Desperation. Those trials, those testings, sometimes, if you're not prepared, if you're not ready, if you're not aware, it can bring you to much desperation. This is what they said. Now, when neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small tempest beat on us, all hope that we would be saved was finally what? Given up. They knew, man, guys, we're gonna die. Write your goodbye letters or something like that. There's no more hope for us. We've finally given up. And that's called desperation. And that's what sometimes you feel when you go through trials, right? You become desperate. It's like your hope is dashed to the ground, because that's your only plan. No plan. Sometimes you don't have plan B, plan C. You just have plan A, and if it doesn't work, that's it. And you lose hope. Desperation is a very terrible place to be in. You know, if you're a survivalist and or a prepper, you need to know the survival rule of 3, right? What is that? Well, you go to any book, or you search it, what's the survival rule of 3? And this is what it is. You can only survive 3 minutes without air or without oxygen. You can only survive 3 hours without shelter in a very harsh environment. Okay, you need to find shelter. You can only survive 3 days without water. You can survive 3 weeks without food. And then someone added in the survival rule of 3, you can only survive 3 seconds without hope. Without hope. And the people in the ship, the captain, and all the other prisoners with Paul, and all the Roman escorts that they have there, they lost hope. That's what storms usually bring. So now that we see the despair that is brought by storms, let us see the decisions that are made out of storms. The stormy times are times of decision. What do we mean? Notice what they did, okay? And because we were exceedingly tempest-tossed, and the next day they lightened the ship. On the third day we threw the ship's tackle overboard with our own hands. So this is what happened, okay? Imagine this. They have to lighten the ship because else because of the wave and the water getting into the ship, it will sink. So, like, you see this in modern times. They have to throw away everything that's heavy. You have to throw away everything that you don't really need. Every weight that can be thrown away, except for food or water, then you throw away. That's what they did. They lightened the ship. They threw the ship's tackle overboard even. It's so heavy that they had to, flip it over with the help of every man that's out there. So what does it mean? When you go through a storm, sometimes you make a decision. You realize that many things in life are not as important as you think it is. So when you go through a storm, you look at your life and say, man, what am I gonna need all these dozens of golf clubs if I'm so sick that I won't be able to play golf anymore? What do I need all these Rolexes and all these Omegas if I'm paralyzed in bed? Who needs all these watches? And then you begin to, in your mind, or maybe actually you throw them overboard, you see the value that, hey, these things are not as important as I thought they were. And so many times, the storms have a way of putting everything into its proper perspective. You look at life and you see that you can sacrifice anything just to bring your family together. You can sacrifice something. You can even sacrifice that job that you thought you've been dreaming forever just to bring your family, bring your children back to your arms, or your spouse, or your marriage. And so now you see that there are many things in life that are not really as important as you think they were, and now you see them. If there's something, we're going through a fire season, if the fire department announces, folks, you have 5 minutes to evacuate your house, this is an emergency, the fire is right there in the corner, you have 5 minutes, what do? Do you get your typewriter? Do you get your computer? Do you get your watches? Do you get your jewelry? Do you get those things? No, you just grab pictures. You just grab important paper. You will even leave some of your best car. Because all you have to do is save your life. Wake up your children, wake up your spouse, and boom, go. So, it reminds us, and then it helps us examine our lives. That's what storms go. It's a time of decision. You have to decide whether you will trust God or not. You have to decide whether you seek the Lord, whether you come closer to the Lord or farther from the Lord. Will you abandon your faith, or will you be more, passionate with your faith? It's a time of decision, and many have fallen on the side because they made the wrong choice. They made the wrong choice. So when storms come, make sure you make the right choice. Make sure it makes you run towards the Lord, not farther from the Lord. Make sure it makes you passionate on the things of God, and make sure those storms doesn't, water down your faith or lessen your service to the Lord. Make the right choice. Okay? And because of that, as we go on, we should understand that stormy times are not only times of despair, times of decision, but do you know that stormy times are also times of deliverance? Times of deliverance. The things that the storms of life brings is this. That is the time that God will do what He does best, which is deliver us from despair, from hopelessness, and just show His almighty power. During the storm, yes, that's the time to deliver. He will not deliver you when everything is okay. You need to be delivered from something that's causing your despair. You're in danger, you're dying, you're hopeless. That's when God delivers you. So here, the Bible, notice what the Bible said. Verse 29 of Acts 27. Then, fearing lest we should run aground on the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for day to come. This is the final step. Thinking that it would calm everything, or quiet the boat, or make the boat stay, or the ship. So they threw 4 anchors. Now, meaning the ship need all the 4 anchors. They threw it down, and they thought that will help them. They thought that it will keep them from sinking and from being thrown by the waves. And so this is what happened. This is what happened actually. It did not help them. The boat is still shaking. It's still in danger of sinking. It's being thrown left to right, up and down, and it didn't help. And then Paul stood up. Imagine, the storm is still going, days and days. They cannot see the stars. They don't know where they are. Now remember, for the past 14 days, they're at the mercy of the waves. They cannot control the ship. They cannot know where the direction is. That's what the Bible said. And so, when they lose hope, Paul stood up and said, man, he said, you should have listened to me. Well, he had the right to say that. He warned them, right? He said, you should have listened to me and not have sailed from Crete and incurred this disaster and loss. Okay? But anyway, he said this too. And now I urge you to take heart. For there will be no loss of life among you, but only the ship. And if you are there together with the other 275 other, either prisoners, crew people, soldiers there escorting them, the prisoners, look, they probably say, what is Paul saying here? And this is what he said. For last night there stood by me this night an angel of God, to whom I belong and whom I serve. He had a vision, he had an actual encounter with angelic being, or some people said it may think it may be the Jesus himself taking the form of Christophany, meaning taking physical form even before Bethlehem, or maybe after the resurrection, and so he said, the angel of God to whom I belong and whom I serve, saying, this is what the angelic being told him, do not be afraid, Paul. You must be brought before Caesar. Remember, that's what God promised him. And indeed, God has granted you all those who sail with you. None will be lost. All of you will be saved. Therefore, take heart, man, Paul said, for I believe God that it will be just as it was told me. God promised I'll reach Rome. I have to face Caesar. And because of that, to reach Rome, that means we have to survive this, right? And all of you will survive with me. However, we must run aground on a certain island. He even told them what will truly happen. So the 4 anchors did not help. And the same with our life. Sometimes we put those humanistic efforts to try to save us. You see, if you cannot calm the storm, at least calm your soul. Okay? If you cannot tidy the ship, at least tidy your spirit. And the only way to do that is with God. So, Paul is saying, guys, those anchors will not help. It only reach a certain limit. It has limit. Those anchors will not calm the boat. But Paul gave his anchors in life from a vision that he had, or an experience that he had that night. And what are they? He said, there's the presence of God. An angel from God, or God send a messenger, whatever it is from God to assure us that God's presence is with us. Not only that, he said, he told me, do not fear. So the next anchor is he has the peace of God. You see, if God is with you, what else can trouble you? The Bible said, if God be for us, who can be against us? The Bible said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. God said, if that will not bring you peace, I don't know what else. But anyway, the angel from God said, do not worry, be at peace. Don't fear. That's the next anchor. And then he had another anchor. You will face Caesar, as God told you. The promise was renewed. Don't worry, remember? How can you face Caesar if you're drowned in the sea? So for you to face Caesar in Rome, then that means somehow you'll survive this. So that's a promise from God. And the promise also is everyone with you. There's around 276, or including Paul, people on the boat. 276 is what the Bible said. And the promise is not one of you will die. Wow. You see, God has given you promises. Promises to claim. Now, most of the promises, you have to do your part. Okay? Most of the promises has to be fulfilled by you doing your part. How can the promise be fulfilled? For example, if Paul refused to ride on the boat, how can the promise be fulfilled? How can he face Caesar if he tried to escape? Roman captivity. See, you have to submit, you have to do your part. And then not only that, there's the protection of God. The protection of God. None of them died. Only God can do that. With all this pandemic going on around us, with all the news, true, false news, fake news, whether the vaccine is effective or not, whether it will make you worse or not, whether you even need the vaccine or not. They even doubt if there's really a pandemic or not, or there's really a virus, a COVID or not. Whatever the case is, God is our only protector. Only God protect us. Go ahead and take every humanly possible means. Take the vaccine. It won't kill you. Some maybe reaction is there, but it's not meant to kill everyone in the world. I mean, since you were a kid, you have so many vaccines, right? So maybe this is part of it. If you don't want to take it, then it's up to you. But remember, only God can protect. And He has used doctors. Luke was a doctor. He was used to protect Paul also from sickness. So, the protection of God is the most important thing. And whatever instrument He allows to use, but it's still God. It's still God. And not only that, the providence of God. The providence of God. Remember, on the first time that the storm hit, the Euroclydon hit, the northeaster hit, they cannot do anything, so they let go of the ship. They just let the wave take them wherever the wave will take them for all those 14 days. But you know what? They reached Rome. The first island they landed on, and the ship was crashed on that island. You know where it is? That's in Malta. You see that in the map. From Sidon, Fairhaven, that's Crete. Okay, and then Malta. There's a Malta right now there. It's still there, a small island. Do you know that all this time from Fairhavens, how far Fairhavens is to Malta? 476 miles, almost 480 miles. In the strong wind for 14 days, they landed on that place. Guess what? Who did that? They were not in control. It's all God. God took the helm of the boat and said, "Hey, don't worry, I'll drive it for you." And God used the waves, God used the wind, God used the waves to bring them there. And someone made a research, and they researched all the maritime information that they needed. And they said it'll take the same amount of time if they travel from the Crete Island to Malta. Same day, same amount of days. Guess what? Who was driving? The captain? Who gets the glory? Paul? No. Who gets the glory? The captain? No. God gets the glory. Because God led them all the way through the storm. And sometimes that's what God is doing right now. God is still with us. God is still on control. God is still driving our boat. Don't worry. He may use the waves. He may use the wind. But we'll get to our destination the way God wants us to reach it. At the amount of time God wants us to be there. See? And from there, from Malta, continue reading Acts 26, 28, and they finally reach Rome, Italy. So what are we saying here? What we're saying here is that all these things, the anchors of life, the providence, God is able to perform. The performance of God. You know what the Bible said? He did not waver at the promise of God through unbelief. Okay? Abraham was trusting God, giving glory to God, and being fully convinced that what he had promised, he was also able to perform. The performance of God. God will do what He says He'll do. God will do what He promised to do. God will provide what He said He'll provide. That's called the performance of God. And I believe Paul, being an expert in scriptures, the Old Testament scriptures, and I'll close with this, his thoughts, his heart, probably while meditating, he thought of what the Bible said in Psalms 107. This is what verse 23 and following said. The Bible said, "Those who go down to the sea in ships, who do business on great waters, They see the works of the Lord and His wonders in the deep. For He commands and raises the stormy wind. See, He commands it, He raises it, which lifts up the waves of the sea. They mount up to the heavens and they go down to the depths. Their soul melts because of trouble. They're in despair. They reel to and fro and stagger like a drunken man and are at their wits' end. They cannot do anything. They have to let go. Then they cry out to the Lord in their trouble, and He brings them out of their distresses. He calms the storm so that its waves are still. Then they are glad because they are quiet. So He guides them to their desired haven or destination. Oh, that man would give thanks to the Lord for His goodness and for His wonderful works to the children of man. If you're going through the storm, if you trust the anchors of God and not the anchors of man, this is what God will do. He's the only one who can quiet the storm. But make sure, if He makes you pass through this storm, don't forget this last part. Oh, that man would give thanks to the Lord for His goodness and for His wonderful works to the children of man. Yes, you can thank your doctors, you can thank the medicine, you can thank the what you call the technology, but don't forget that over all this, thank the Lord for His goodness. Thank the Lord for His goodness, outlasting the storms of life. Are you going through one right now? Is there a warning signal you're about to go through? Or you've just gone through one? Whatever it is, by God's grace, we can outlast the storms of life. Thank you. May God bless all of you. Good night.